Hey guys, it's History Behind the Warrior, and welcome to yet another God of War video. Coming off our exploration of other pantheons, and where Kratos may go next, shameless plug, in today's video I wanted to touch on a character that is not only important to the fourth main installment, but also the universe as a whole going forward. Today we'll be talking about none other than the former ambassador of the Nine Realms, and the smartest man alive, the Aesir god of knowledge and wisdom, Mimir. But before we quickly do, I just wanted to say I would really appreciate it if you could all get this video to about 500 likes. It helps out not only the channel, but this video a ton, giving it that extra push right out of the gate. Plus, if you're enjoying all of the new God of War content coming your way, please don't forget to tick that bell and subscribe, as it will keep you in the loop with all of my new content coming your way, like the history of Athena coming next. Now, whilst introduced as an Aesir god, Mimir in fact does not derive from the Norse pantheon. Mimir in fact comes from a completely different pantheon and world outside of the Aesir, one that is located within the British Isles. Whilst the games haven't gone into detail of Mimir's own history, we do know that he derives from Scotland and was a somewhat jester to a fairy king known as King Oberon. So yes, Mimir could be seen as a fairy. Now, Mimir's mischievous antics brought Oberon much joy, as his sharp tongue and wit allowed him to pull the wool over the eyes of any human. Mimir's antics were seen as a crime by many, but the king overlooked these crimes, taking a shine to him, as his jests would cause him a lot of joy from the chaos that would ensue. However, in time, Mimir's antics began to tire the king, and the favor of his allies quickly soured. Sensing that his jests may lead to his own demise, Mimir ran far away from his home, seeking asylum in lands far away from his own. With his grand and vast knowledge, he was able to learn of the Nine Realms and the Aesir. So, with this information in tow, Mimir was able to stumble into the world of the Norse pantheon, looking for a place to call home. Now, it was no secret the reputation that the Aesir held. They were strong, brave, and brutal warmongers amongst the Nine Realms. Thus, Mimir would seek shelter in their strength. But he knew that to do this, he would have to prove that he was a valuable ally and asset to them. Thus, he would approach their leader, the All-Father Odin. In exchange for their hospitality, Mimir promised Odin the Well of Knowledge. The well was said to be filled with the tears of reality, designed to bestow any that drank from it with vast knowledge of the universe and the world beyond their own. But in reality, it was actually just a hole that Mimir had dug and filled with a few dozen shrooms. So in short, Mimir drugged Odin and got the All-Father so incredibly high that the god ended up gouging out his eye. The visions that Odin had seen seemingly tricked the god into believing that he had far greater knowledge than he actually had. Thus, Odin would take in Mimir and welcome him to the pantheon of Aesir gods. So going forth, Mimir would serve as an advisor to Odin, and once his protection was guaranteed, Mimir kind of became self-absorbed, choosing to only serve himself and encourage Odin's war against the realms. But in due time, with war and tension lingering between the Aesir and Vanir gods, Mimir would abandon his jester roots and instead take on more of an ambassador role, seeking to unite the realms in peace instead of having it fall into disarray. This change would mostly come to light during the long war between the Aesir gods and the Vanir gods, as the battle had gone on for so long that both sides were tethering on a tipping point and collapse. So, Mimir would approach Odin with a deal, one that said that the Aesir would lay down their arms and unite their people with the Vanir gods in exchange for Freya's hand in marriage, and this was an offer that the All-Father would happily accept. But for Freya, it took some time to process, but eventually, when she came to the realization of the harsh reality of the situation, she would come around to Mimir's offer, choosing to take Odin's hand in marriage so her people could survive. Although this relationship started off on a shaky foundation, the two were able to foster love together, and in time sire a child, Balder, to which the Vanir goddess at some point bewitches Mimir to never utter the words that would break her immortality spell on Balder. The unification between Freya and Odin forged in a new era of peace for the Nine Realms. Unification between the lands was at an all-time high, with Odin's son Tyr making peace on his behalf as he travelled across all planes of reality. Mimir during this time was nothing short of delighted of what he had done. He indulged in the unification of the Nine Realms by travelling to every far and lost land, learning of their culture and worlds, and drinking with all that came across him, sometimes to the point where he actually passed out and injured himself. Luckily, on one occasion, he would be found by the Valkyrie Aesir, who was able to tend to his wounds. After this interaction with the Valkyrie, it has been said that Mimir kindled a somewhat relationship with one by the name of Sigrun. Whilst it isn't elaborated on too much in game, it has been implied that the two were lovers for a time. Now, Mimir's drunken escapades eventually brought him to the realm of Jotunheim, the realm of the giants, who were the oldest enemy of the Aesir. But despite this, they were in fact very welcoming to Mimir's company, dining with him and even in time, sharing with him some of their own secrets. As a form of trust and gratitude for his desire for peace, the Jotuns would gift him with Bifrost eyes, something that would allow the fairy to transverse the realms, although this didn't stop the inebriated Mimir from nearly getting them put in his nipples. But the time for jokes was quickly silenced in the coming age. Unfortunately, during Mimir's travels, the Allfather's knowledge of Ragnarok had driven him insane. The paranoia he had of the prophesized events had caused him to turn on all that he held dear. Friend or foe, Odin had a reason to suspect anyone, and once denied the foresight and clairvoyance of the Jotuns, the Allfather would lay siege to all giants that remained in the world of Midgard, having his son Thor lay waste to all that defied the now mad Raven King. Due to the large amount of time Mimir had spent with the giants, Odin immediately singled him out as a traitor amongst the Aesir, even revealing to him that the well incident had in fact not affected him as much as Mimir had believed. So, as somewhat punishment for his misdeeds, Odin, with the assistance of the Valkyries, would imprison Mimir to the realm of Midgard and seal him in an unbreakable tree for all of eternity. This was a punishment the Allfather relished in, as going forth, he would take time out of every day to torture Mimir in new and endless ways. This ranged from the emotional heartache of knowing that the Jotuns cut themselves off from everyone, to the Allfather's own physical way of searing pain into his flesh. He would even tear out Mimir's Bifrost gate eyes, much like he had taken out one of his own. This suffering went on for many years, being visited by the Allfather and his fellow Aesir. But one day he would be greeted by an old yet familiar face that he dearly missed: Sigrun. Their interaction was very brief, but Mimir had noticed a change in the Valkyrie. Her ascension to queen had caused her to seem far more aggressive and out of character from what he was familiar with. When Mimir tried to console in her and understand what was wrong, Sigrun could only respond in puzzled words, one so vague that sadly Mimir was unable to help her. Tragically, this would be the last time the two would interact with each other before meeting each other on very different terms. Now, what follows after this point is a long 109-year-long winter of egregious torture at the hands of Odin. Mimir had become a mockery of the Aesir gods, being looked down upon despite his incredible knowledge. So, understandably, his own spite towards towards the Aesir grew exponentially, but eventually he would be freed. So this takes us up to his first in-game appearance in God of War 4. When we first meet Mimir, it is shortly after Kratos has battled and defeated Baldur, who is still in pursuit of hunting down the remaining giants. Baldur and the children of Thor, Magni and Modi, seek an audience with the God of Wisdom, wishing to know the location of the Ashen Warrior. But Mimir at this point has no time or patience to spare for the Aesir, telling them all to piss off. Call it chance of fate. But after Baldur leaves, he is greeted by the likes of Kratos and Atreus, who at this time are looking to spread the ashes of Fae across the highest peak in all of the 9 realms. But once Mimir learns of their noble quest, he informs them that unfortunately they are in the wrong spot. Whilst they were in the highest peak in Midgard, the highest peak in all of the 9 realms was located in the faraway lands of Jotunheim, a place that Mimir was more than happy to guide them to. When questioned by Kratos as to why he would assist them, he reveals to the Spartan the harsh reality of his predicament, how every day he's tortured by the Allfather for entertainment. This was not living. So, with that in mind, they would hatch together a plan, cut off the head of Mimir, and in turn have the Witch of the Woods revive him. But upon his reanimation, as he's actually technically dead, he's shocked to learn that the Witch of the Woods is in fact Freya, who then quickly proceeds to spit in his face, understandably still bitter about her marriage to Odin and later exile from Asgard. Whilst he is still thankful, she retorts that she only did it for those two, and Kratos, shaken by the knowledge of the witch, leaves her home in a bitter state. From this point onwards, Mimir acts as an oracle of sorts for their journey, tutoring the two on the legends and tales of the 9 realms. His reanimated form even serves as a second pair of eyes for Kratos in battle, so he can call out to the Spartan if he's ever ambushed from behind. Unfortunately, however, when Mimir is questioned of Baldur's weakness, Freya's spell prevents him from uttering such knowledge. Thus, he is unable to truly put an end to him. Now, during their journey, Mimir guides the pair towards the upper northern region of Midgard, as they require the chisel of Falmer to open up Tyr's vault so they can get to Jotunheim. After coming to blows with Magni and Modi, they are successful in acquiring the chisel. However, before they can enter the vault, the duo are attacked by Modi, and this fight incapacitates Atreus. When taken back to Freya's home, it is Mimir who accompanies Kratos on his trip to Helheim. But in the middle of this journey, not only is Mimir able to deduce where Kratos is from, but also his identity as a child of Zeus, as the ghost of Sparta. Whilst Kratos is displeased with Mimir referring to him in such a way, Mimir assures him that he means it in a flattering manner, as he himself had learned of the fall of Olympus and what the gods had done. As the two travel back to Atreus, it is Mimir who encourages Kratos to reveal his true identity to his son, further preventing him from ever becoming sick again. And whilst on the surface this seemed like a great idea, this revelation of sorts caused a stir and change in the character of Atreus. After acquiring the black rune from Tyr's vault, Atreus begins to act out irrationally against Mimir and even Kratos, uttering cold and callous words at the expense of others. Once they reach the top, Kratos and Atreus would be attacked by Baldur, with Mimir being the one to call out the attack. This fight quickly falls into disarray, with the battle spilling out to the Bifrost Gate and Baldur attempting to take them to Asgard. But before he can, Kratos locks in the gate to Helheim, to which all 4 of them are sent. But with a little help from Mimir, they are able to escape the realm. With the gates now gone, their dream of spreading Fae's ashes seemed to have died. But there was one last and final idea: the Unity Stone. The stone itself would allow any in possession of it to leap off the edge of Yggdrasil and fall into a gap between the realms, realms. Once here, Kratos and Atreus were finally able to recover the lost gate of Jotunheim, but it was missing one final key to restore the gate, a Bifrost crystal, and luckily for them, Mimir used to have one as an eye, located in the gullet of the world serpent. As it was ingested by the giant, when he ate Thor's statue where Odin hid it, they would travel deep into his stomach and finally obtain the key. But before they could complete their mission, the world serpent would be attacked by Balder, and another fight would ensue, with Freya being brought into the fold. Eventually, Balder's immortality spell is broken, and Freya's spell on Mimir is snapped. After a long and hard-fought battle, Balder is finally defeated and killed, much to the suffering of Freya, who then swears vengeance against Kratos. With their adversary defeated, Mimir is finally able to restore the Bifrost Gate, and Kratos and Atreus are finally able to complete their long quest. Unfortunately for Mimir, he's left in the care and company of Brock and Sindri, who then toy with his head, taking measurements of it. Now, not long after the dwarves leave, Mimir is paid a surprise visit by Freya, still on the path of vengeance. She questions Mimir about the location of her Valkyrie wings, and where exactly she can find them. Now, I will touch on that arc in a bit, as it is quite important to the story of Mimir, and thread and weaves itself out of the main narrative, as it's an optional side quest. When the two return, they are finally able to rest. So the quest is over, but Mimir warns them that the death of Balder, in fact, ushers in a new age for the Nine Realms. Fimbulwinter, the dawn of Ragnarok and supposed end of Asgard. And nothing solidifies this more, as whilst Atreus rests, he receives a dream and somewhat vision of a future that is yet to pass. And whilst this may be a dream, Mimir says that this could be seen as an omen of things to come. Now, going back on the topic of Valkyries, shortly after acquiring the chisel, a side quest opens up in game that allows Kratos, Atreus and Mimir to hunt down the lost Valkyries. Now with the realm overflowing with the dead, it is seen as a noble quest for the two, as the Valkyries are spiritual beings. But as it quickly turns out, this quest is far more sinister than it seems. At the death of every Valkyrie, another piece is added to this puzzle of who imprisoned the Valkyries, who is responsible for allowing the realm of the dead to overflow. As blood is shed, Mimir comes to the horrible and painful realization that this all goes back to Sigrun. This is her doing. As Kratos tears his way through the Valkyries, Mimir begins to question them, wanting to know what had happened to their queen and these mortal forms. But the Valkyries, much like Mimir, are shocked and surprised by the betrayal of their queen. Realizing that they have a lot of work on their hands, they would disappear to the afterlife, guiding the dead and restoring the realms. But what of Sigrun? Well, Mimir ultimately comes to the conclusion that his former lover has lost her way, and that the only way to stop her was to restore the Council of the Valkyries and finally summon her. Something Mimir warns Kratos to, as he knows what she is capable of. After a long fought battle, the Valkyrie Queen is finally defeated and restored to her spiritual form. She thanks Kratos and Atreus for relieving her of her cursed form, and when she is questioned by Mimir, she is shocked yet pleased to see him finally free. But both are deeply saddened how they have only been reunited as shadows of their former selves. It's here where she reveals the fate of the Valkyries and how Odin's spite and hatred turned against them. His own paranoia had caused him to curse them to mortal forms, possibly in a desperate attempt to twist the fate of Ragnarok. Odin's selfish ambitions had caused the fall of the Valkyries, and having seen what was slowly becoming of her sisters, Sigrun was forced to imprison each and every one of them, hoping that none may find what they had become. With the truth finally revealed, the realms could finally begin to heal, but Mimir would be left speechless, as after this, having seen what the terrible years had done to those he loved, he realized that immortality came at a price. The tale of Mimir is a tragic one. From jester to ambassador to lover, the story of Mimir takes him far and wide across many lands. Whilst mischievous in his earlier years, it seems like the sins of his past came to haunt him tenfold in the form of the Aesir, the very people he had hoped to have kept him safe. And even in death, whilst free, he's forced to gaze at a barren world that he had once called home. It is a very sad tale, but despite this, the sharp tongue and wit of Mimir keeps his spirits alive. But this very well could be a way for him to hide his pain, as knowledge like his does come at a price. But for now, this has been it for the history of Mimir. I hope you enjoy this one, because Jesus, this one took quite a while to put together, but I'm glad I did. Mimir is easily one of the biggest highlights of the 2018 installment. Whilst he could be seen as just a character that alleviates tension with humor, he, in every sense of the word, is a chronicler. The smartest man alive has tales as far as the 9 realms themselves, and thus he's a key and essential character that allows the world to flourish more than it does. Mimir's inclusion is nothing short of a pleasure, and I cannot wait to see more of him and his tales in God of War Ragnarok. But for now, as always, stay strong, stay well, and keep on fighting as Ragnarok comes for us all. Take care everyone,